Church in downtown Kinston, North Carolina. Welcome to our weekly Bible study. Today we're going to be going over the last part of chapter 9 and getting into chapter 10. Didn't quite make it through 9 last time, but want you to know that we're going to persevere. So if you bear with us. Okay, here we go. Moses is in the process of castigating all the people. It's not really what I call a morale-boosting talk before you start on a difficult mission. Basically, he's saying you ain't worth nothing, and you're all trash, and you got nothing but bad in your past. There's no reason why anybody should trust you, but for some reason, God wants to drag you through this and throw you into the promised land, whether the folks there like it or not. So that's where we're going. Okay. He picks up at 22 at chapter 9. At Taberah also, and at Massah, and at Kimbroth Hatava, you provoked the Lord to wrath. See, you did it again. And when the Lord sent you from Kadesh Barnea, saying, go up and occupy the land that I have given you, you rebelled against the command of the Lord your God, neither trusting him nor obeying him. You have been rebellious against the Lord as long as he has known you. Well, that's a long time. Throughout the 40 days and 40 nights that I lay prostrate before the Lord, when the Lord intended to destroy you, I prayed to the Lord and said, Lord, do not destroy the people who are your very own possession, whom you redeemed in your greatness, whom you brought out of Egypt with a mighty hand. Remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Pay no attention to the stubbornness of this people, their wickedness and their sin. Otherwise the land from which you have brought us might say, because the Lord was not able to bring them into the land that he promised them, and because he hated them, he has brought them out to let them die in the wilderness. For they are the people of your very own possession, whom you brought out by your great power and by your outstretched arm. Man, there's an endorsement.
Is that why Israel is still messed up today?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if we can point fingers.
I know.
We seem to have gotten messed up a lot.
Well,
So,
it's never going to change.
you know, human nature doesn't change. It just doesn't. And the thing that's, there is a redeeming quality to all this. Okay? We know that the Israelites are considered God's chosen people. But as Christians, we know that everybody is God's people. God made us all. And there aren't any people on this earth that God didn't make because he loved them. Think about that. Not saying how they turned out. I'm just saying at the get-go, it wasn't God's intention that they turn out bad, right? And if they did turn out bad, it wasn't God's intention that they stay bad, that they get good. So one of the things that I think is important for us to realize out of this, and we're talking about Israelites, okay? But one of the characteristics that does persist from Old Testament to New is the persistence of God. In spite of us. Not because of us, but in spite of us. The persistence of God. And that God's love is incredible. It just stays with you in the midst of all kinds of situations, even when we don't necessarily love God back. That God has not stopped loving us. You know, it's like we say in communion, like we will today, you know, Christ died for us while we were yet sinners. That proves God's love for us. Okay? So, you know, this is a characteristic that carries through from Old Testament to New. And as much as we might look at God and say, well, boy, this is a vindictive, jealous, you know, mean-spirited, ornery God, the fact is that the love of God transcends all of that. And that God is going to be faithful to the people even when the people weren't faithful to God. And it gives me some hope. I don't know about y'all, but all things considered, God really doesn't owe me a thing. And yet, he's right there. God's there in the midst of it all, even in these trials that we've been facing. So, and I'll tell you what, because I have seen this, and we are seeing it this very day, you really don't want to mess with Israel. You really, really don't want to do that. Okay? That's probably not a cost-effective thing to do. And it tells us something else. I'm not saying that Israel's perfect. There are some policies that Israel's had that I've challenged, as much as I've challenged some of our own policies. But you can't expect nations today to be perfect. You can expect them to want to move on to be perfect, like we are. We're not perfect either, but we're trying to move in that direction. If we have an issue, we have a mechanism to change course, and it's a good thing, because there are things that we've done in our past that we really need to change course from. So, little by little, gradually by gradually, at least the process is working, and in Israel it is too. The people have an opportunity there to change course when they need to, and sometimes they make good decisions, sometimes they make bad. How's that different from us? But what they're doing generally is to be supported. They're a democracy like we are. Well, more like the British, but they're a democracy, and they don't want to be at war with the people around them, even though the people around them want to be at war with them.
What's the difference in the British and us?
They have a parliamentary monarchy. We don't. They have a parliamentary monarchy, and we ain't got no kings.
No, I know we don't.
Thank goodness, thank goodness.
Yeah, I know we don't
Yes.
have a king, but I'm talking about as far as laws and stuff like that goes. They're basically the same, aren't they?
No, they're not. They have a parliamentary. They have a parliamentary system,
But
and
we
the
have-
prime minister is a member of parliament, like any other member of
We have a Senate
parliament.
and a Congress and,
Yeah, they have a parliament and a House of Lords.
The House of Lords are not elected.
No, they're appointed.
okay.
Okay. Our Senate, when it started out, was close to that because the senators used to be elected by the legislatures of the states, and they changed that. So
We
we've got.
studied Abraham in Bible study Wednesday, and the Abrahamic covenant. I will bless, if you bless my people, I will bless you. If you curse my people, I will curse you.
Yeah, it's working out that way.
It sure is. God said it.
Yeah. Yeah, just,
God
I mean,
can't go back on his word.
I have, I have seen that firsthand. Okay, I've seen that firsthand. Because when you're surrounded by over 100 million enemies and you've got 2 million friends, things aren't supposed to work out your way. But over and over and over again, even when they just about lost it. The thing is, I find this interesting because there have been a number of occasions, this one included, is that Israel most often starts out losing and ends up winning.
I'm like Joshua.
Yeah. Yep, you start out losing, you end up winning. And if people can't see the hand of God in some of this, I'm sorry, you've got to be blind.
No.
You just got to be blind.
The United States is between a rock and a hard place with this Israel thing, and we want to support them completely, but we want to,
Right now, we don't want to support them completely.
no.
Right now, there isn't any indication that we want to support them completely. Okay? Right now, we're a drag. We are a big drag. And there are some reasons why, in our own national interest, that we might want to drag, but on the other hand, in our national interest, I think it goes the other way. The more we can support them to eliminate this threat to everybody. You'll notice that all the stuff that's going on right now in Lebanon and all Guess who's not criticizing them? Saudi Arabia.
Oh.
Duh. Okay, you don't see the UAE, you don't see all these Arab states that are on the Gulf, all the Gulf states. You don't see them criticizing Israel for anything they're doing right now. It's like, yes, yay. And I think something that's going to be very telling is going to be how effective Israel retaliates with Iran directly. That's something that we need to really pay attention to. This can escalate into something much wider, but I really don't think that it will. That's me. I don't think all this stuff about how this can blow up into World War III and everything. No, I don't think so at all, because Iran does not have the backing of the other Arab states, and they don't have the backing of virtually anybody else but Russia, China, and North Korea. So I don't think that they're in a position to widen the war. The consequences for them would be absolutely devastating. I mean, just the stuff that we have parked in the Gulf right now. You know,
Wonder why they can't figure that out. Iran.
I wonder why we can't figure it out.
I mean, they the wars they've started, and they don't have the army, they don't have the technology, they can't win, and yet they still.
That's why they want other people to fight. They want everybody else to fight for them. Okay, just to keep the pot stirred. Their objective is not to win. Their objective is to keep the pot stirred. Okay, so that Arab states are uncomfortable in supporting Israel and finishing that pipeline around the Gulf. That's their whole objective, is to keep things so stirred up that nobody will finally make a deal so that there could be an outlet for that pipeline through Israel into the Mediterranean. That's all they really want to do. You know, and as much as they talk about from the river to the sea and all that stuff, that's a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. And I think they need to. Well, the whole thing about using terrorism as a tactic and stuff like that, from a military standpoint, what you're trying to do is not to win. You're trying to just keep the other guy off balance. You know, just when you think things are going good, bam, some stupid thing happens, you know, and all of a sudden the world gets all upset again. But the idea is just to keep the pot stirred. That's the whole thing, is to keep the pot stirred. Because God knows, if they ever really did send a nuke someplace, there would not be an Iran. That'd be the end of it. So, anyway, this thing ain't over, and it ain't going to be over anytime soon. But I think it's kind of interesting that Arab states are not critical of Israel. You just don't see that. And even Saudi Arabia, I mean, they made a big deal about Saudi Arabia coming out once again saying there needs to be a two-state solution to this. Under the present circumstances, that's not a solution at all. But what people didn't see was the rest of the Saudi statement, that if there is a two-state solution, if there is another state besides Israel that is Palestinian, they have to respect the right of Israel to exist, and they have to treat them as a good neighbor. That's what Saudi was saying. It wasn't a blanket, there's got to be a two-state solution. There's got to be a two-state solution that respects the rule of law and goes by international norms. But if they're not going to do that, then it's not a viable solution. That's what the Saudis were saying. And basically they're right about that. So anyway, but here Moses is reminding these people that they're stiff-necked people, that they're no good, that they're not trustworthy, and that God stays with them anyway. So we've all got some hope. Okay, chapter 10. He goes on. At that time, the Lord said to me, carve out 2 tablets of stone like the former ones, and come up to me on the mountain, and make an ark of wood. I will write on the tablets the words that were on the former tablets, which you smashed, and which you shall put in the ark. So I made an ark of acacia wood, cut 2 tablets of stone like the former ones, and went up the mountain with the 2 tablets in my hand. That must have been a heck of a climb. Then he wrote on the tablets the same words as before, the 10 commandments that the Lord had spoken to you on the mountain out of the fire on the day of the assembly, and the Lord gave them to me. So I turned and came down from the mountain, put the tablets in the ark that I had made. I like that. I did this, I did that. Okay. And then, and there they are as the Lord commanded me. Okay, there's been a lot of discussion about the Ark of the Covenant. You know, where is the Ark of the Covenant? And it's a box. Okay? It's a fancy box. Okay? But the fancier the box, the more valuable the thing that's in the box. Okay? So I'm wondering where the tablets are. You know? That's they're more important than the ark. But everybody is about the ark, the ark, the ark. And this is the thing that's kind of it's a borderline thing, is when you look at the way the Ark of the Covenant was treated by the Israelites, it's just a hair's breadth away from idolatry. It's close. Okay? Now they understand that the Ark is not God, okay, but it's where God sits. And in order for you to talk to God, you got to get to where the ark is, where God is sitting. And the only people who can get to the ark are the high priests. How accessible is this God to everybody? Okay? If you look at the way the ark is presented, this God is not terribly accessible. So is the ark something that facilitates communication with God, or is it something that impedes it? Same thing can be said of the temple itself. Okay? And I found it interesting that when the temple was destroyed, that Judaism was not also destroyed, because their faith was so closely tied to the temple, and yet when the temple went away and the people were carried off to God knows where, they're still Jews. And they found a different way. Part of this comes from the role of the Levites. Okay? Now it was the function of the Levites to attend to the temple and to carry the ark. So they were the ones who were carrying the law. Right? Okay. So when they didn't have that thing to carry, there was still the law. And it was up to the Levites in the cities that the Levites got in the enclaves that the Levites had in all the different tribal areas. That was the place where you went to find out about the law. And so this thing has evolved where you went from the Levites carrying the law physically to the Levites carrying the law intellectually and spiritually into the provinces throughout Israel. And once things got really scrambled about who was a Levite and who wasn't a Levite, you started to have synagogues and rabbis who functioned as the Levites, bringing the law to the people on a regular worship basis. And the synagogues, in a way, became mini temples, because you had the Holy of Holies in the back. If you went on that tour of the synagogues here in town, there's a curtain, and behind the curtain were the Torah, the scrolls, okay? So in the temple, it wasn't so much the ark that was in the Holy of Holies, it was the law that was in the ark that was in the Holy of Holies. And so in synagogues, you have the same kind of arrangement. And it's up to the rabbi and others to read the law during the course of their worship. So it's always there. It's always brought before the people. So you can destroy the physical thing, but you can't destroy the physical thing or the spiritual thing that people bring. And we have followed that model in Christianity. Our form of worship is not terribly distant from the form of worship that you see in synagogues. Follows a similar pattern. The scriptures are read. You know, there is a sermon. There's a word preached. There's wisdom imparted. There's a place where you teach the children, and you know, we need to recognize that that's part of the lineage and heritage that we have. We've inherited that from Judaism very effectively, I think. So less effectively lately. COVID did a lot to interfere with churches. Not so much with liquor stores and, you know, go-go dances and things like that, but it sure did hit churches hard. So this is a model that we follow. But just remember that the law is still there. We still carry it. We still teach it to our young. We still, you know, find that as a mission that we've been given, just as Israelites have been given that same mission within their communities today. So we are not that different from each other in many, many respects. We have a lot more things in common than we have in difference.
Going back to the ark,
Yeah.
in my mind, it would add validity to a lot of the Old Testament. I mean, in the ark were the Ten Commandments, was a jar of manna. You know, a lot of people could read this stuff, and it's like stories.
Yeah.
You know, Bible stories. But the ark gave validity to it.
Yes.
And I hate it when nobody can find it or knows where it is.
Well, according to Indiana Jones, it's some government warehouse right now.
Yeah, and that was a great movie. I mean, because, you know, back when the ark was there, if you remember, one time they were carrying it and they almost hit something, they almost dropped it, and the guy reached out to touch it, and God killed him.
It killed him. Yeah.
You know, so, and then the Indiana Jones guy, he said, don't look. You know,
Yeah, bad idea for a Nazi to open the ark. Just saying.
I mean, to me, it adds so much validity to a lot of the Old Testament. And you know, and you think about it, manna falling out of the sky for people to eat. I mean, that's almost fairy tale type stuff.
Yes.
But then to have a jar of that in the ark and the Ten Commandments, God carved them out of stone. You know, it just adds so much, in my mind, you know, strength and validity to what God could and did do. I hate it they can't find it or it got lost.
Maybe it's a good thing that they can't.
But maybe so.
Maybe it's a good thing that they can't, because it's out there.
Yeah.
I read or saw on the History Channel that they think it's up on a mountain in Egypt in an ancient Indian village that's very primitive. Nobody goes there.
It's Ethiopia, actually.
Is it okay?
Yeah, it's Ethiopia. And the people who guard it
Uh-huh.
are descendants of Solomon and Bathsheba.
So you've seen that story too?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Interesting.
And they allow no one in there,
Right, exactly.
and no cameras.
Nothing. Very primitive.
Very primitive. But it's, you know, you'd think somebody would crash their party, but
Yeah, you would. They could fly a drone over it.
they could fly a drone over it. They could.
This is in Ethiopia, you
Yeah.
said, on a mountain?
Yes, there are a lot of Jews in Ethiopia, the descendants of Queen of Sheba, there was a time when they were on the verge of being horribly persecuted in Ethiopia, and Israel went in and rescued them and brought them as refugees to Israel. So you have an Ethiopian Jewish community in Israel. It's all heritage. Okay? And one thing I can say about the Jews in Israel, they don't forget their own. You know, if you have Jewish heritage, you could be a citizen there.
So supposedly the ark is with those people?
That's what they claim.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they claim.
Well, I mean, why not?
Good as any other place
Yeah.
right now, you know. There's some people who think that there are chambers under the old temple that have not been explored. And actually, that's true. There are chambers under the temple mound that have not been explored because the Arabs won't let you in there. So, in fact, when the Arabs took over that area, they went in and whatever chambers they found, they just dragged out any kind of artifact they saw and threw it in the trash. They just tossed it because they didn't want any validation that that was a Jewish site. Duh. So it's interesting how history comes around and bites you sometimes, you know? All right. Well, here Moses has got two new tablets, and I think it's interesting. The first tablets God carved out. The second one Moses had to carve out, and God wrote on them. But it was a partnership. The second set of laws was a partnership between human effort and God's effort. And you see this merging taking place, which is, I think, kind of a different paradigm about it. Normally, I wouldn't give you 2 bits for a paradigm, but anyway. The Israelites journeyed to Biroth Benedjerkin, to Mosra. There Aaron died, and there he was buried. His son Eleazar succeeded him as priest. From there they journeyed to Gudogah. Great stuff. Oh, good, yeah. And from Gudogah, great, I love this stuff, to Jabbathah. Oh yeah, a land with flowing streams. At that time the Lord set apart the tribe of Levi to carry the ark of the covenant of the Lord, to stand before the Lord, to minister to him, and to bless his name to this day. Therefore Levi has no allotment or inheritance with his kindred. The Lord is his inheritance, as the Lord your God promised him. Okay. This has had an impact, by the way, on concepts of clergy. The rabbi is supported by the community. The rabbi, in really poor situations, has a side job a lot of times. Same thing with Christian ministers. But I have been in churches that felt like the parsonage was my allotment. Okay, and the people decided pretty much how my salary was going to go. But it's a different concept, okay? And at the same time, they kept us pretty well impoverished. They didn't want me to have any side gigs. So, and they also wanted my wife to be just about as busy as I was in the church. So, and my kids all had to be good. Kids all had to be good. Because, I mean, they shared in the allotment, right? So, they could set standards for my kids. Actually, my kids were pretty good. I can't say as much for theirs. I stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights, as I had done the first time, and once again the Lord listened to me. The Lord was unwilling to destroy you. The Lord said to me, "Get up, go on your journey at the head of the people, that they may go in and occupy the land that I swore to their ancestors to give to them." So after all of that stuff, we're getting back on track. And you know, this thing about going off track and getting back on track, going off track, getting back on track, that's not just a Jewish thing, that's a Christian thing. We have gotten off track so many times, and eventually, generations later, maybe we get back on track, or we find a track that's been out there that nobody wanted to travel on ever before, and sure enough, the church. I'm looking at a church that isn't always going in the right direction, okay? But it's something like a sailboat. If you're going to go into the wind, and the church is always going into the wind, okay? You've got to tack. So sometimes you got to go sideways in order to go forward. And the church has gone sideways a lot, okay? But what's the general direction? What's the general direction? And I think the general, you look at, for all the problems that we're imposing on ourselves these days, here we get a Sunday school class that's sending pots to Armenia and money to take care of people in disasters, and we're looking after folks in the towers, and we're trying to figure out how to get food over to I-Corps, and we're still doing it's. The sailboat is still sailing. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay?
It's still going forward.
It's still going forward. It might not be able to go forward in a straight line, but it's going forward. Okay? We aren't hanging heretics or annihilating adverse populations. We're not burning witches at the stake anymore. The Inquisition is over, long done. But generally speaking, the church is a lot better church than it was in the Middle Ages, and a lot better church than it was even in the 18th century. And I think, the church really doesn't advocate for slavery anymore. It's just, there are a lot of things that we're doing different these days that's better than we were. And so, okay, yeah, we go sideways, but, sometimes the wind is blowing that way. You got to deal with the wind. And that's what's happening. The wind will blow you off course if you're not careful. But somewhere along the line, you got to go sideways the other way in order to go forward. Okay? So that's who we are. And I think one of the things that's really interesting about the church is that if you look at the symbol for the church, the historic Christian symbol for the church, it's a boat. It's a sailing vessel. Up in Nantucket, they have a church that is constructed as if it is a boat upside down. But we're like that, and we just got to be careful who's at the helm, and everybody's got to work the rigging. That's just the way it is.
And like you said last week, it's the Christians that showed up first in Western North Carolina.
They're the ones who have been showing up first, second, third. Okay. We've seen the government kind of, my goodness, it's just been awful. But
I saw a thing on Facebook the other day. It was from a lady up there. And she said they wanted to keep the government agencies out of it. She said her brother-in-law, I think, or somebody had bought a bunch of chainsaws to carry up there, and they wanted them to regulate them. She said, they don't need to be regulated. They need to be given out, and it was a whole bunch of...
There have been reports that the government's actually confiscating donated goods and claiming it for themselves. It's just horrible. And I know that there have been a lot of helicopter pilots, active duty and National Guard, that have been just chomping at the bit to get up there, and they haven't gotten the go order. So I don't understand this. I really don't. I mean, I've been working with the state in disasters for years and years. I've never seen anything like this before. Never seen anything like it.
I'm in the quilt guild, and we make quilts for disasters. And we have gotten in touch with, we've heard a lot of bad stories, and we've gotten in touch with, there's a lady that's president of the Quilt Guild right up there in one of those small towns right in the center of all the devastation. And we're going to send the quilts or hand deliver them, whichever way, directly to her. We're not going to go through any agencies or anything.
That's good. That's good. Well, look, see you next Sunday. We're going to finish up chapter 10, get into chapter 11. Tedious as it might be. We'll see you later.
I want to tell you something. The door to the elevator
Yes.
is not